Hello, hello. Just quick pre-info about interpretation. Alle, die, ich weiß nicht, wurden gefragt, weil viele verwirrt waren, was ich eigentlich sage. Genau, alle, die, das Panel findet auf Englisch statt, alle, die Dolmetschung, Simultandolmetschung ins Deutsche brauchen, melden sich bitte kurz, beziehungsweise kommen vor, weil dann bekommt ihr Kopfhörer und unser tolles DolmetscherInnen-Kollektiv hier vorne übersetzt, beziehungsweise dolmetscht nämlich live. Okay. So, now I think we are almost ready to start. Thanks a lot. Again. And yeah, we're super happy to have this amazing panel today in the morning. The title is Roots of Resistance, African Voices on Environmental Activism, initiated by Don't Gas Africa. And yeah, so I won't do much of an introduction, just a couple of words. Maybe some people are the first, like here now the first time, so there's the info point, there's the awareness crew, you can, if you have any questions, please go to the info point. There are also like a lot of materials program, how to get around, how to find the other rooms. And saying that, I think we are just up like with the first session for today, so starting a bit late, but I think everyone was happy to have a slow start. And now we get into the discussion, and yeah, we're super happy that Téclaire offered to facilitate this panel discussion, and yeah, I think I give it to you.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much. Thank you. And first of all, thank you all of you for being here this morning. It's Saturday morning, but we are not so few people that have found their way here. And more further, we have our speakers coming from several African countries. We imagine this session to be kind of big chat session without any like over formal things. Yeah, just take the time to share the experience of our speakers, but maybe also from your side, maybe you've done something in this regard, and it would be a great thing also to have your participation. So I'm Téclaire, I'm going to moderate this chat, this big chat, but the main speakers would be the three guys here that just arrived in this venue. So for their introduction, we agree for us to have their name as you can see them here, and then at the beginning, they will add their background. Is it okay for you? Because they better know what they have been doing. Ah, that's the sign we do when we are okay. And when we're not okay, what do we do? I hope our hand will be all the time like doing this. Yeah, okay. So welcome to Austria, welcome to Vienna. Welcome to this session of on roots of resistance. So African voices on environmental activism. So thank you very much. So first, ladies, maybe it's now not, it's out to date to begin with ladies, but let's do it once again. Let me introduce Hamira Kobusingwe. Hi, Hamira. Nice to have you here.
Hi.
I like your hair.
Thank you very much.
And sitting next to you, we have Dean Bebe. Hi.
Hello.
Dean Bebe is director, is founder of one campaign called Don't Gas Africa, but also director of another one called Power Shift Africa. Very nice to have you here. Anything I say incorrect, you will have the opportunity to say it right, okay? That's the deal we made. Okay, And last but not least, we have Prince Israel Oreka, who is a local community activist on the environmental rights in Nigeria. Am I right? Okay. So we will cover like 3 big areas: the gap between what they want to achieve and where they are staying now. And then we will cover the challenges, what are the big challenges they are facing, but also the opportunity. And at the very end, we will touch the point of how to collaborate or to cooperate with, let's say, Western group of activism. Okay? Yeah! Okay, so let's start with Camila. Camila, what are the challenges you're facing in your work? What do you do first? What do you exactly do?
Thank you very much. My name is Hamira Kosinje. I am from Uganda and I'm a gender and climate justice activist. I think I have, and one of the reasons I'm here, I have been mostly known for my fight against pollution and the expansion of oil fields, but also the fact that the global north is extending their consumption problem into our backyard by building new pipelines, starting the production of gas in Senegal, and not forgetting that I started my passionate fight against fossils from the issues that were happening in the Niger Delta, Port Harcourt. I think that's where Prince comes from. So yeah, that's my work, and I also represent women and the intersection between gender and climate change and how women are affected. It should be noted that in a climate crisis, women are 14 times more likely to be affected by the tragedy compared to men, and they suffer the impact of climate change way more. And it should also be noted that the climate crisis pushes the feminism movement so many decades back into the suffering we have been going through as women since time immemorial. Thank you.
Thank you so much for offering our background to us. Maybe we now look into the background of the 2 other panelists so that we have the bigger picture and we can start in the discussion. Please, Dean.
Thank you. My name is Dean. Again, hi everyone. I am not the director of PowerShift Africa, please. I only lead the campaigns at PowerShift Africa. The director is Mohammed Ado, who's a great friend and mentor. But I also started and I lead Don't Gas Africa campaign, which is a coalition of over, I think now, close to 1,200 civil society organizations in Africa, pushing back and trying to make sure that Africa is not locked into fossil gas production. We have turned 2 years as of yesterday as the Don't Gas Africa campaign, or rather should I say the Don't Gas Africa movement, and we look forward to sharing the different struggles that we've had throughout our period in existence. We work in various African countries. We have got hubs in the DRC, in Mozambique, in Nigeria, in Senegal, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe. We also have a few as well in North Africa, one in Tunisia, although not exactly active. We've got a good working group as well in Morocco. We've got one in Cameroon as well. So we try our best to really be centered across the African continent to really represent the true needs of the African people. We are pushing back on energy agency capture, we're pushing back on energy colonialism, and we are trying to renew the vision for Africa in a transformative way where developmental pathways are unlocked. Also part of the Don't Gas Africa campaign is we also support and complement the efforts of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, in the sense that we are calling on that as a working remedy to try and hold our governments accountable. And we've been supporting them as well for the last year and a half as well. And we are also working on renewable energy solutions, but in particular, this year we are really trying to come up with a good story for the Don't Gas Africa campaign. And we want to create a new platform that isn't saying no to gas, saying no to oil, but a platform that says yes to something and what that exactly looks like. So it involves not just the people-centered approach, but also how we tap into financing the transition and financing renewable energy for African countries, decolonizing the global financial architecture, achieving economic justice. How do we understand debt? So all these are the different conversations that we're trying to have as well within the Don't Gas Africa campaign, which is also growing. We have had in our first year the launch of the Don't Gas Asia movement. I'd hoped to have my colleagues from Don't Gas Asia here, but they are sadly not here, but they're with us in spirit. And we are also going to be launching a few other Don't Gas, either Latin America or Don't Gas the Amazon as the year goes as well. But the movement is growing and we're very much happy to be here and to engage with everyone on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. You're very welcome. Let's go over to Prince Israel from Nigeria. You are a local community activist. Could you add more to your background for us?
Okay, very good morning to you all. My name is Prince Israel Reka. I found Connected Advocacy. Connected Advocacy is a grassroots movement that promotes social and environmental justice to ensure that the marginalized communities are given voices and their capacity are also built. We've been working around the Niger Delta Climate Change Exhibition, telling the stories of the impact of climate change as it affects us, the local community. Often in most of these events, local communities are being excluded completely from climate action, and this we find it as an injustice to the local people. And these are people who bears the brunt of the impact of climate change, and these same people are not being, their concerns are not being put in the table of decision making. And negotiations upon negotiations, their interests, their concerns are not filled in this engagement. So that is why we take it as a concern to also bridge this gap and ensure equity and justice for local people. So we've been working around issues around local community summits on the oil divestment by SHARE and other IOCs, and how they can begin to do what we call environmental audit and citizens-led action. And this we are trying to push in our own way, looking at what Don't Gas Africa has been doing in other parts, and being a partner and colleague in this movement, we find it very fit to see that local community are giving voices, and this empowerment will go a long way to ensure community organizing and people-centered approach to climate and environmental justice movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the picture. I stay with you. How should we imagine a local community in your context?
Okay, for us, local communities are those people who are the grassroots, those people who live in the community where these oil extractions have been extracted. And most of us, we read them from books. There are people who stays in those communities. There are people who feel the direct hits of oil extractions. There are people who also feel the concerns of dirty, polluted water that they drink from. There are people who have their life expectancy cut short to a bare minimum of just 43 years. There are people who have lost their livelihood, who normally, we were traditional farmers, we were fishermen. This is our traditional state of livelihood. But right now, due to these extractions, these particular activities are gone to extinction. Low yield of agricultural product, and you see communities right now migrating a lot. They want to come and change the occupation, and this was not originally what they were built for. So these are the people I'm talking about.
Okay, so they are mostly in the rural areas,
Sure.
or also in the cities, big cities?
There are rural areas, there are semi-big cities, there are cities and semi-big cities.
Because I can remember that in the big cities, you may have all kind of classes in one area. Let's say the poor one, the one without defense, and the other one that have their houses in the beautiful areas, and they're not sharing the same problem, let's say.
For us, we only have two classes. We have the lower class and the upper class. The middle class is eroded right now, so we don't have middle class. Yeah.
Okay. Is it something you're missing?
Yeah, it's not something you're missing. This is what is the reality right now on ground. Due to most of these things I just mentioned earlier, their means of sustenance is cut off, so they are down there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. To allow you to have a rest, let's step forward to Hamira. And Hamira, I'm very interested about this gender aspect you bring into your work, because, yeah, how should we imagine these gender issues attached to environmental problems?
Thank you very much. When we had the Karamoja drought that we're still dealing with, so many girls were pulled out of school because they had to, the water that would fetch from probably 2 kilometers, which would take them like 30 minutes to go and 30 minutes back, which is an hour, then they would spare some time to go to school. The time they went to get the water for their families was doubled. And then the plantations and the crops dried out because of the too much heat. And then the time they had to go and look for food also increased. So you find that, also something I forgot to mention, that food in Africa is a problem of the woman. It's like women left to feed the families. So it happens that even when you come from a family that has a single father and there's no mother, the father is always going to look at the girl in the family to be like, oh, what are we going to eat today? So when I talk about the time being doubled to food hunt for the family, the time being doubled to look for water for the family, the time, and then when the worst gets the worst, then you become a child bride and you're sold off for to have something, or to have a cow given to the family that will feed them with milk. So for us, when it comes to the climate crisis, we become a commodity. We become a means of survival. We become the fallback plan. And when you look at any crisis, we always emerge out as the losers. We find ourselves that we're pulled out of school. We find ourselves that even the things that help us during menstrual health are given up on, and hence period poverty comes through. We find ourselves that we become child mothers, and then so our life expectancy becomes short. But also, I know I asked a very short question, but I'm going to give you a long answer. But also, we also know that if women are empowered in this climate change fight, we can do so much to combat the climate crisis. And even Project Drawdown has reported that if you empower girls and educate them, between the two solutions for the climate crisis, you find yourself that you're combating close to 192 gigatons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So imagine, so what I'm trying to say is we are both affected the most as women, but we are also a very, very strong army in the fight against the climate crisis. Thank you very much.
So what you try to reach is not changing the roles, the social roles of the women, but make their life easier in terms of maybe bringing the water closer to them, or you are also really trying to also educate men so that they can support women in their daily work. So what's your target? Because that's very important for me to see the perspective from which you are taking your action, and to compare maybe with other perspectives.
I think even before I became a climate activist, as a grassroots actor, and all I wanted is to see young girls being empowered and So when we say we try to keep girls in school, we're just giving them an opportunity, an equitable opportunity to see that we get to a place where there's justice, that justice prevails, to make sure that girls stay in school, to make sure that girls are empowered with money, to make sure that they have a fallback plan, because we have seen that things like domestic violence, things like the problems that women face stems from the fact that we are not empowered and standing on our own as a person, and we have to depend on the men. And not forgetting that, yes, I've also found myself in rooms where I have to talk to men and see to it that they are knowledgeable about what goes on and what needs to be done in this fight for gender justice and climate justice combined. So, yes.
Okay, so you want to empower girls, for example, that they can stay at school, but in addition, they should be the one that still fetch water, because in that case, they will have like double work to do.
Oh, no. This is the thing. If you ask me, I'm all for, I'm looking for the word, for a strong human being. So where I come from, boys do chores and girls do chores. So it is a shared benefit. But also, we're so that once we empower girls, they stand up for themselves. I can come and tell you today, no, don't do this to this girl. No, don't. But I can only fight for them for as long as I am in their presence. If I am out, they can't fight for themselves, and I need to have a woman that fights for herself.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then, I have the feeling that you very focus on this independency and decolonization and so forth. Is there any place in your fight or in your entrepreneurship for other contribution from outside Africa? What is the spirit of your campaigns? Open to other people to support your cause, or just like doing the thing by Africa for Africa?
Okay, so thanks for your question. The right answer is we're doing something for Africa, by Africa, for Africans.
Okay.
100%. So we are a pan-African movement, and Africans lead the way. We also have a right to define our own destinies and to own those destinies. But we absolutely want friends. We want individuals who stand in solidarity with Africa, which is what individuals like Activists, Bloc Gas Alliance have done. Fossil Fuel Treaty, for example, individuals in German Watch as well, in Germany as well, not just German Watch, but other individuals in Germany. So across the globe, there's always been individuals and actors standing in solidarity for the African movement. And that has benefited us in many ways, right? Obviously, last night I spoke about what we did between Africa and Senegal and pushing back on the gas investments, and that was an example really of what collaboration might look like. But it was actually an agenda driven by Africans, with, for example, German activists helping to facilitate that discussion with the German government, which proved to be very successful. Another aspect that we're also trying to do is we are trying to own the energy system and have a people-centered approach to it. All the gas projects currently in Africa, not even the African government owns those gas projects. I mean, let's even begin there. And if we look at the Woodside project in Senegal, the Sangoma oil fields, I think Woodside, which is an Australian drilling company, owns about 78%, and then the Senegalese government owns under 15%. And then the other small percentages are to brokers and other people. That alone becomes very problematic, because even the argument that the fossil fuel industry states that, we are doing this and setting up this infrastructure in order for us to unlock resources and profit for that said country, The ownership question then makes it very difficult to even tap into that profit. You know, if we're going to look at it purely from an economics point of view and a profit point of view, no one is really breaking even. Only the polluter is breaking even, essentially, and that money is leaving Africa. So it becomes very problematic also in the sense that we are also functioning in a broken financial system. By broken financial system, I mean that we are at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to Africa. Imagine we live in a world where if we provide cheap raw materials, and those cheap raw materials are bought. When they become finished goods, we have to buy them back. But when we're buying them back, you have to understand that, for example, if I come from South Africa and I'm buying back finished raw materials from Germany, I use South African rands, I don't use euros. That means that I have to go to my bank and use rands and transform those rands into euros for me to buy a finished product. Mind you, when I first sold my raw material and I bought that, and that raw material was sold, the rate or the foreign currency rate was different from when I'm now buying it back as a finished product. That means I'm actually buying it at a loss. And when I get that finished product and I've bought it from a loss, that means that I am not breaking even. There's a deficit. In order for me to match that deficit, I have to produce more. In order to produce more, I have to invest more, meaning I have to borrow more. So I'm caught in a cycle of debt. And that's where African countries are currently at the moment, and that's something that we need to break. When the Bretton Woods system was created in 1945, it was created to unlock development across the world. There was no African country independent in 1945, unless someone wants to correct me. So my question becomes, why have we allowed systems like the Bretton Woods system to determine economic activity in the 21st century when it was put in place at a time when there was inequality and colonialism across the globe? Yet we're still using that same economic activity to determine how we function within the financial system as Africa. The same system that was used to perpetuate colonialism, the same system that we're still functioning in, which would explain why we're still continuing to be at the bottom of the food chain. So if we want, we sell our raw materials, we get cheap product. If we want to industrialize or set up assembly plants, we import. If we want to package our goods, we import. If we want to, again, transport our goods, we import that transportation. So we're not in control of our system holistically. And that's one of the things that we're trying to tackle as well as a campaign and as a movement, but purely from how can we create a new framework where Africa can actually rise and be an individual that drives its own agenda without being shackled by the systems that we're currently facing.
Let me get you right. It means the focus of your fight is on the economy less than on environment. Is it right, or you try to combine them?
No, not really. I mean, I was just answering your question. I was just answering your question. We have 5 pillars as a movement. So there's one on corporate capture, where we look at corporate capture holistically and what ideally that looks like. We've got the public finance pillar, where we look at public finance issues, whether the money into renewable energy is coming into Africa, and if it's not coming, what is the problem? And to also build upon having oil, coal, and gas excluded as well within the financial structure, such as the World Bank or the African Development Bank. We've got a pillar called the African Voices for Africa's Future, where we amplify community voices and get grassroots movements in the right platforms, across different platforms, whether it's abroad, whether it's in Africa, but giving them a voice to share their story. So just recently, we just did the Shifting Power documentary, which screened for the first time at the European Parliament. We had about, I don't know, like 50 European parliamentarians present to actually watch that documentary, and we had a big session around what that meant. And we had communities that were represented there to discuss that, for example. The other pillar that we also have is the political pillar, where we engage with the African Union to try and push back on gas. So for example, when the campaign was birthed, it was because we're trying to push back the African Union from adopting gas as a transition fuel in the African continent, and we pushed back on that and we won that fight. And then the other pillar that we also work with is the narrative pillar. The narrative pillar being the pillar we were trying to raise voices, raise awareness around human rights, educate, climate literacy, and also to shift the narrative that gas is not a transition fuel, what we mean by stranded assets, what we mean by a carbon bomb. So there are different layers when it comes to the work that we are doing, but it depends on the question that you also ask, right? But essentially it's quite a holistic version. But the one that I do find very challenging and exciting is the one around achieving holistic justice, right? Because there is not, the climate emergency is not just the climate emergency, it means so many other things. And the climate emergency is just one of the things that we're trying to tackle. And the work that we're trying to do is how do we achieve climate justice in a way that creates a sustainable energy system. A sustainable energy system that can in a way unlock development for Africans, and a developmental system that can better socio-economic livelihoods for individuals across the globe. So we're trying to look at the relationship between those three pillars and to holistically come up with something that is tangible, that is people-centered, that is equitable, that is feminist, that is representative and inclusive.
Oh, that's quite challenging. Thank you for doing that, for trying to do that. I will be like, not worried, but the question of, because many of those African countries, they have a lot of fossil fuel. What are they going to do with that? It's just like, delete them? Maybe that's a source of some kind of resources they also have to sell to the whole world. So now to come and say we're trying to balance because of the environmental issue, how is it like accepted by those people? Or how do you integrate what one could see like a renouncement to these resources that may be present in the African soil?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a very good question, very important question. You see, so sometimes when they say, no, Africa has got every right to develop its natural resources and exploit them, it's true, Africa has got every right to develop. The question is not about Africa's right to development, the question is about Africa's true path to development. There is nowhere in history where Africa has developed as a result of fossil fuels. In Nigeria, there have been fossil fuels for the last how many years?
Since 1956.
Since 1956. And the life expectancy in Nigeria is 43 years old. That is the life expectancy, and they've been using fossil fuels. And how many people in Nigeria don't have electricity access? Over 50 million people don't have electricity access. What is the literacy rate in Nigeria? It's under 30%, for example, as well. What is the pollution rate? What is the infrastructure? There is no development across Nigeria, yet they've had fossil fuels. In Mozambique, they wanted to address the 70% who do not have electricity access, so they brought in gas. 5 years later, do you know how many percentage of people don't have electricity access in Mozambique? 72. Doesn't make sense. In Uganda, they wanted to achieve that as well. But now we've got a number of people that have been displaced as a result of that, who've lost their ancestral homes, graves have been desecrated. And my colleague is here, she can share those stories. There is no point in history where we can use fossil fuels in the African continent, because I'm from Africa, so I don't know about the rest of the world. But I see the world burning, so I don't think it's working out for anyone anyways. So, but for Africa, it has never benefited us in any way. There is no pathway to unlock development across Africa. If you want to use South Africa as an example, I can give you a number of communities where the water is polluted. And actually the girl child cannot even go to school because there are no sanitary means. Women are abused because they have to walk long distances, and because we live in a shitty world with shitty men, women then become very vulnerable as a result of that. So there are so many examples that I can use as a result of fossil fuels. Even militarization. The reason why we have political instability in Mozambique right now, it is because of the gas interests. If you look at the DRC and how individuals are living, it is absolutely tragic. Right now, kids go and mine. A child who's under 10 years old is not going to school, but instead they're going to go mine for whether it's lithium, whether it's diamond, whether it's gold. The system is broken, all in the name of extracting Africa's natural resources. And to be fair, De Beers Gold, for example, is not African-owned. That is a British-owned company. So I'm not sure when people say that Africa needs to develop its own resources, what that essentially means, because we do not own those resources as well. If you look at the contract that Mozambique signed with Total in France, it says that if the government decides to back away from that project, they have to pay such a hefty fee. We're already riddled with debt, so we already have no choice but to actually see that through, unfortunately, right? But these are the lived experiences that we currently live in Senegal, where there is fossil fuels. In St. Louis, that fishing community, 80% are food insecure. Sons try and leave Senegal and cross over the sea to go to Spain to look for a better life. They die on the way there, right? The fishing boats are destroyed because every time a fisherman in Senegal wants to go fish, and it's an area where we've got British Petroleum or Petrozen, for example, the army is sent through to destroy their boats. So they don't have a livelihood, they do not have development. When the community in St. Louis had to have their homes moved, it was because of the gas exploration. And what happened is, because they were exploring for gas and drilling, the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem changed, and there was high sea level rise. As a result, their homes were turned into swamps, so they had to be relocated. Where they were relocated are makeshift houses. The material where the houses live in is material that you would use when you're using a raincoat, a literal fucking raincoat. And that is where they've been living, and they've not been compensated. There have been no promises of them moving into a better place. That is the reality of fossil fuels in the African continent. So I'm very surprised when individuals want to come to me and say that we deserve fossil fuels in order for us to develop. I have not seen that in any case.
No.
So it's false.
Did I mention that Dean is an activist? But we also promised that it will be a big chat. That's why I'm now giving the floor to you, so that you can put your question on that stage before we move to what we will see like solution, or like, let's say, the way out of this. How do you call it? No, bad word. He used some bad words. Okay, we don't repeat them. Okay, so maybe do you have questions, or you want to complete something? Max, going to come to you?
My question is, I guess, to all of you. What do you need from us in Europe?
Thank you very much for your contribution and insights. I'm Clara, based in the UK and part of the Stop ECOP campaign in UK. You've referred a few times about this sort of neo-colonialist approach of developmentalists in the sort of global north way. A lot of the fossil fuel projects have been sold by the promise of jobs and prosperity. And I'm just wondering if in your work you've come across trade unions and labor activists who organize workers in African countries and started to get collaborations, or are they actually on the side of the fossil fuel projects? Don't know if you had any experience of that. I'd be interested.
So the second question could be for any of you. The first one we programmed to tackle it at the end, so to see just what we expect from each other. So it will come. Want to add another one before we answer?
About the holistic approach for Africa, what does this concretely mean for states like Uganda or Nigeria when they have fossil fuels? How does, for example, farmland or development function? How does trade function? How could these things truly be developed in a sustainable way?
Maybe we take this one first. Are you okay if we take this one first and then we come back to you?
The last question.
Yeah.
The last question.
The last is
Max,
for you.
can we get the last question again? Because we both didn't really get it.
Just leaving out the fossil fuels, how do countries develop, especially considering it being a country being isolationist or not dependent on other countries or needing to import energy, but just having their own agriculture, or how would trade look? How would it all look if it's developed? Like, what is the path in a socioeconomic upward trend without having to depend on fossil fuels? Where are the opportunities to get this trend and maybe develop infrastructure, develop trade within Africa and within even one country in Africa? And yeah, just because I don't know.
I think I should start with the last one, because it looked technical. Yeah. My friend, thank you very much. Before the advent of fossil fuel was discovered. I told you in my own place it was discovered in 1956. Before 1956, we were existing. We were working. We have our indigenous languages, our indigenous way of life without fossil fuel. We have our farms. We have edible foods. We have clean waters. This we have without fossil fuel. I tell you, fossil fuel for us at the grassroots is more of a curse than a blessing. In the sense that now I have polluted water. I see older people here. You hardly find old people in my place because they have all gone. They are dead due to the pollution that they inhale. You have clean air here. We don't have clean air in my place. We air those dirty forces. Our respiratory systems are dead. They are corrupted. Our mental health, most time. 2 weeks ago in a community in Bayelsa, we have to shut down a school because of the heat wave of gas flaring, without even informing the people that they are increasing the volume of the production rate because they are divesting. After over 60 years, they are leaving the community now with stranded assets, stranded personnel, and stranded community. Without compensation, without remediation. Is fossil fuel being a blessing to us? The answer is no. So we have been living before, and will still continue to live. But before they leave, which they want to live now, leaving our onshore, that's our community, going to our deep waters to further pollute our aquatic lives. Now they are not talking about compensation, they are not talking about remediation, but they are living. Normally, if you rent a house for somebody, you say you should pay down payment deposit in case if you misplace or you spoil anything, you use to fix it. They don't want to fix the environment right now, but they want to live. And so sad enough, we have a government who have very weak policies. They have unreliable regulations. We were shouting, okay, why divestment without remediation? Why divestment without compensation? 2 weeks ago, they also hurriedly bring out a framework because there was no even framework for divestment. And if you looked at it, the issues of the local community who are really impacted, we're not even capturing most of this divestment. And the degradation they've caused over the years, we're not also captured. Another divestment that has occurred, they've not even looked into it. No environmental audit to clearly show the damages, the level of destructions, and they are divesting. And some are even going into decommissioning. And this is a big call for concern for us. And to shock you more, there is more investment into the same thing. The Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, they are hurriedly working on the implementation of that. That will cover over 5,600 kilometers. 13 countries in the West Africa coast will be affected with this gas pipeline. Now, I'm not even hearing anything about what will happen to those local community people where these pipelines will pass. The villages, the water, and the people. So we are looking at a great biodiversity loss within this region, 13 African and West African countries. Now they are signing the treaty quickly now, because on January 14th they met, the Moroccan government and the Nigerian government, how they will see the ECOWAS, because my president is currently the chairman of the ECOWAS. So signing these things are just like quick. We need more voices to begin to speak on these actions. Because the painful part is most of the local community do not even know the impact and the damages of this fossil. Imagine a community shouting, give us gas flaring, because there is no light. They use that flaring at night to see. So I never knew that that same flaring is what is damaging their health. You see the kind of web of confusion that we find ourselves. So that is why our people need to find a footing. And footing in the sense that I thank God that most of you are here to actually hear the true stories of the impact of how these things happen to our local people. And we need more of your voices to begin to speak on these issues. Take up most of these campaigns, put it up so that they can hear these things, because we can no longer keep quiet.
But the point here is the fossil, the gas, or the management of those and the security. Is there any way to be climate justice? Because it's like money against health, you know?
Yeah, that is why they call it the profit over people. The government is interested in the profit, how much they're going to make, not considering the people.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So let's go to the question about decolonialization. Maybe you have an answer for that?
Sorry?
Do you also experience this aspect of colonial-like practices in your work?
Neocolonialism?
Yeah, in your field. It's okay.
I think, I don't know what I'm answering, but I jotted some things down, and I think it comes from the last question to the second question. But just to point out a few things about the collaboration the last person talked about. I think the relationships we have as economic relationships we have as Africa with the corporations that come from majorly the global north is really a toxic one, because we find ourselves usually strong-armed, and I go back to the point of the choking debt we have as countries, that we are strong-armed into contracts that are really unfair. For instance, Dean was talking about how the Senegalese government has less than 15% in their project of the gas project, and it's the same thing that is happening in Uganda. Total and Sinok, between the two of them, have 70% of shares on the ECO project, and it's this unfairness that we see, that it means 70% of the oil produced from these fields and from these projects is majorly produced to feed into the consumption of the global north. That even if we had this relationship, and it's a really toxic relationship, and until we find a way of understanding that if it's going to develop African countries, it has to be in favor of African countries and not against them. I've already said that these projects come to shift the cons and the problems of production into our backyard, leaving us and making us huge polluters, but also destroying our biodiversity. In my case, displacement. They have encroached on our fishing areas, they've encroached on our tourism sites, they have encroached on our water bodies. So that's one project. And I think in the same breath, I'm going to answer the lady that talked about jobs. When I say that the jobs that are promised by the projects vis-a-vis the jobs that are lost due to the project, the math does not math. You find yourself that, for instance, I'll talk about Uganda because I'm well conversant about my country. The pipeline is going through, the Talinga project is going through national parks. It has encroached on forests. It has encroached on farmland. Where the project is coming from, the Western Uganda, is the most fertile place of our country. And we have farmers, we have tourism, people who earn from tourism. We have, We have people who earn from cattle keeping. We have fishermen. All these jobs have been lost only to create jobs from a project that is going to pollute and also destroy our health. But not forgetting that while we talk about these jobs, that when corporations like Total come to our countries, they do not employ people from our countries. They come with expatriates, and we shall not forget that. And also to note that even when we get the jobs that we get the ones that are really deadly, the ones that we cannot live 70 years older, we will die probably at 30. But also it should be noted that I highly doubt how much jobs are going to be given to the people in my country if the construction right now is being done by expatriates from China. So these are all things, and I know I'm running through this because of time, but so I don't know if I've answered both your questions, but yeah, I think Dean will continue from there.
Yeah, Dean can continue from there, but then stepping into the last round with the question, what is the way out, what opportunity, what do we expect from the North, and what should they expect from your countries or for your actions?
Okay, thank you. Let's see your question. So the trajectory, right, is renewable energy. We need to get that right, because in the African context, and I think one of the reasons why they don't want this to happen is because Africa's got abundant renewable energy resources. Now we only just don't have enough sun and wind, but we also have the green minerals necessary to make renewable energy thrive, meaning Africa will become global renewable energy leader. You know, so there wouldn't be, Africa would be the concentrated area and the global south, like Asia, for example, where we have abundant renewable energy generation. And that is something that they do not like, because that's them losing power. But that's the trajectory that we need to be embarking on. If we look at the current geography across the African continent, we need a new green industrialization framework that Africa can then use its green minerals to leverage, right, climate finance into renewable energy. The question we need to ask ourselves, although it's not a good example, but it's an example, is how is China currently doing it? Because they've completely neglected everyone and they're doing their own thing. And China is thriving, right? It's exceptionally very, very well. Minus the human rights violations that occur in that country. I'm just talking about purely the economic model, right? And that's what Africa currently needs. We need a new green industrialization framework where we'll be able to tap in and leverage our green minerals. The belt where those green minerals are located, there was once a proposed train assembly line, you know, that was going to go from DRC, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi to create a green minerals industrial hub. But there hasn't been technology transfer in the African continent to make that possible. So even if we have the necessary wind and the necessary sun, we still do not have the battery storage solutions technology. We can only buy, we cannot actually create that. And we need to also now tap into that market. But then people have to be willing to transfer that technology across the African continent. Now, even if we stayed and used fossil fuels, right, as to play the devil's advocate, as I mentioned again, we cannot develop with our own fossil fuels as well. Do you know why? Because we do not have refining factories anyway. So when the oil leaves Nigeria, it's crude oil. It's not even refined oil. So the argument is still null and void as well, which is why we need to try out something new. There's a lot of economics around this, and I'm happy to discuss this with you because that's what I'm doing when it comes to my PhD, the economic framework of the green industrialization framework in Africa, but also looking at between climate, water, and development. So we can get into that. The question around neocolonialism. Who mentioned neocolonialism? She's not there anymore. All right, there's no neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is a wrong term because when you say neocolonialism, you're saying that colonialism ended and now there's a new form. There's no new form of colonialism. It's purely colonialism. We should keep it right there. Right? We are still living in a colonial era. We're not in charge of our destinies, right? I still have to apply for a visa to come to Europe, yet I'm also a human being who's educated. Is that representative of a neo-colonial era? It is colonialism because the world is still currently structured to keep me as a black person out, right? So we're living in a colonial era. If we look at even at the example of, one example that I like to use, although it's not climate related, is when Libya was having its struggles. And all the African presidents, about 6 of them, decided that we're going to go to Libya to try and mediate the problem in Libya. So they all flew there and chartered an aeroplane. I think Jacob Zuma was there and a few other presidents. When they were about to land in Libya, NATO refused. NATO refused for African leaders to land in an African country. And they threatened to shoot down that aeroplane. And then you tell me that we're living in a neo-colonial era. We live in a colonial era because we're still being told what to do. And that's where the problem is. But then to answer your question, there has been emerging dialogues between climate justice activists and the labor movement. After all, it's the labor movement that brought in the word just transition, right, essentially. But the question now becomes, how do we then absorb the skills from the fossil fuel industry workforce and upscale them in order for them to be absorbed into the renewable energy industry? So it's a question of political will. It's a question of having the right climate finance to actually finance that transition and to also ensure that people's jobs or income is not disturbed as a result of that transition. And those are ongoing discussions. I mean, it's unfortunate that we lived in a very messed up world, so we cannot get everything right, but we are trying, and the best way to eat an elephant is one small bite at a time.
It will take time to eat an elephant in small bits, but we have time. Okay, where do you see the way out of this situation?
We should start with our baby steps. The baby steps we are proposing in our organization is to ensure a co-creation initiative. She was asking, how do we support? I think you should support the co-creation initiative, where Africa and the West can come together jointly to provide that support. You have the technology, you have the skills, you can train us, you can share. While we have some indigenous knowledge, we can also train you with to enhance your storytelling skills, to enhance mutual engagement around local people. And also the need for technology transfer in renewable energy and the anti-renewable energy groups. I think we need to begin to look at these groups. How can we find a balance? This is a real concern for way forward. We must not shy from these things. And also, very importantly, we are losing activists, especially from where I came from. Polluters are buying up activists because their means of survival as an activist is slim. We have young people now who are supposed to be intensifying, unifying these voices for action. Now, they are now key leaders of the forced solutions. They are now champions of forced solutions. Can we still continue to, and many more activists are falling for this. And this is a gray area, this is a big gap that we must continue to look. How do we begin to care for one another as an activist? Because most activists from my side, they are giving up. They are losing the struggle daily. Because the fossil fuel, the polluters you are fighting, they have the resources, they have the connections, they have the backing. But an activist, just like what we did last month, when we did local community summit on environmental justice and divestment, some of the key local community leaders, they called me and said, why are you teaching these people on the impact of this divestment? Why? Because if these people's knowledge are enhanced, they will come for us. You understand? So they are selling out because of what? Self-gratification. We cannot leave them like this. So let us begin to look at how do we care for one another as an activist. I think just a letter of encouragement, even retweeting their struggles to ensure that they are not alone. So we meet. This is the bridge we must close.
Before closing, I think there was a question there. You wanted to put a question there. You. You can use mine.
Thank you. First of all, thanks that you're here. It's really nice to see you and to hear your stories and your experiences. And I'm not so quite sure what my question is, but I wanted to ask something about how important you see it to also build and implement and to discuss alternative energy provisioning systems. Like, how much emphasis do you put on this? I heard that you criticize a lot and you work a lot against an industry, and I was wondering how important you see it to build these alternative systems somehow. That's my question.
Sorry, what do you mean by alternative systems?
Like if we think of, I don't know, like big oil companies, like how do you see alternative systems in terms of maybe more democratically governed energy provisioning systems? Like maybe not having a huge company, but like a cooperative or like some more community-owned infrastructure somehow. Did I clarify it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think what you're trying to push out is energy democracy. For the people, by the people, and this is people's own energy sources. Is it what you come by? So that's why I was talking about technology transfer. If we are only pushing for the renewables, local community don't have the investment, the resources to actually invest in this. So it's also a big gap. So, but if we begin to look at the energy democracy circle, letting the people lead, taking this impact, building capacities of local people to put up local community clean energy alternatives or parks to generate energy for them that could help sustain their livelihood. I think it's a work in progress and it's what is possible. Clean energy for local community people is possible. Train them. They have the natural resources, so you have the technology. Let's bridge this gap. This time for action, not plenty talks. I think we can do something. Thank you.
Another input from your side, because you're closing now, last round, so that we have time for small talk between both panels.
Hi everyone. Good morning and thank you very much for being here. I'm Eva from Italy. This is a question for all of you. Thinking about the fact that you were mentioning, Prince, that activists are being drilled away by fossil fuel company. There's an example in Italy I would like to tell you about. There's the oil and gas giant Eni and Snam, that they are like invading schools and universities and research centers in order to establish connection with the students and, let's say, change their minds about false solutions and that a future with them in it is possible. So my question is, how do you see the role of university and research centers and schools in Africa, in your country specifically, and if there's a way by which your movements, your NGOs are establishing connection with university and professors and research center and researchers to change this asset, to, I don't know if oil companies and gas companies are doing the same that Eni and Snam are doing in Italy, but their hands are all over in the university system. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I didn't get her name, but thank you very much for that question. What's happening for us, when we became activists who were isolated, who were just activists, and who were self-taught most of the information. So what is happening with our organization is we are trying to go into universities, go into schools, and spread the information, and we're treating it like the gospel, and we are telling people that this is happening, and we are sensitizing communities, we're sensitizing students, but also now we are acknowledging the need for this information to be part of the school curriculum, because when we push, which we are also getting a very huge pushback from institutions like Prince had talked about. But it's helping us now. We have numbers. Initially, you'd be like 2 people who know about the information, but now we have numbers. Kids from university want to know more. They want to know what we can do. So we have broken down the solutions to beyond just talking about it. We are also talking to people who actually know what's happening at the grassroots level, people who actually, so it's like now has become a hub of so many people doing so many things to actually achieve the greater good of climate justice. So there's that, and I think I'll close after, right?
Mm-hmm. You want to add something to this? Okay.
Thank you for that observation. It's true. We partner with the University of Benin, Department of Sustainable Development, and why do we do that? To do the Nigeria Climate Tech Innovation Bootcamp. We found out that in the university, the fossil fuel guys built hostels. They even built classrooms. They say renovated by Share, renovated by NDDC. So you see them already in the schools. So it's not a new thing, they're already there. Even they are in communities, carbon captures. Those community guys that is doing them is our young people. So it's really true. So we also need to also continue to build our own system. This is the real way to go, follow through this path. They are there, they have the resources I told you guys before. They built labs, they built classrooms. Even they build hostels. So they are already there, it's not a new one. But let's continue to see how best we can also teach our young ones.
But does it mean that since they have the means and we have a idea how to do it better, if we talk like real talk with each other, we can find the ways to balance this situation?
That is why we are talking here.
Okay.
That's why we are bringing the concerns here, so that our people here will understand where they can also tackle, where they can come in, what they can do, so that we can all together, we can make a big difference. So it's a collective effort, it's not a one-man fight, but it's better you understand the issues, so that when you're articulating it, we can come up with a possible
solution. But I meant the effort, the common effort with Shell or Total. Is it any way we can sit together and talk about those things, and you know what, you have money, building school, maybe let's do this thing. And
I think I will leave that
I hope.
Because they have a campaign on kick Total out of Africa, so.
I think Dean has the best answer for that. But also, I think to top up on what Shaz said, there's something we came up with. It's a vow to the planet. And I know it doesn't do so much, but I think if you guys joined us on it, it would actually do a lot. It's a vow where we vow not to work for polluting companies and corporations. So a number of young people have come up, even straight from university, and they're like, I will never be an employee of a polluting industry like Total, like Coca-Cola. And I don't know, it feels like we have started a fight, and very soon probably, hopefully, these corporations will run out of employees in our countries and in our communities, which then they have to either rely on the elders, or they have to actually be pushed into doing the right thing and stopping pollution. So it's a fight we have started, and you guys from here can join us. It would really be beautiful. Thank you.
But just to because you mentioned going out from employees, we observe now like a migration in another direction, like Portuguese going to Angola for work. Maybe if they go out of local employee, they can import the employees from other countries.
True, but right now I'm in Austria telling people to boycott them.
Okay,
if I go to Senegal, I can also tell them to boycott. And trust me, young people we love our planet, we love our environment, and we want a better planet for the next generation. So hopefully we shall also tell those people to boycott. And how many people you keep importing? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you please repeat the question for Dean?
No.
I think I'm the only one moderator here. Don't listen to her.
I understood the question. It was the question. It's fine. You're right. We need to start working with academics a lot, because the fossil industry has captured the academic institutions. We just attended the Africa Gas Forum. We didn't manage to postpone it, but it was there. And the gas industry is offering a number of scholarships to study geophysics, to study engineering, to study physics and stuff, right? So they're tapping into the aspect that, you know, Africans cannot afford education, particularly at the university level, because it's not free in Africa. So because of that, they offer so many incentives to families who want kids to go to school, and they create a breed of geophysicists, environmental scientists who were funded by Total or Shell or BP in order to get an education. So that on its own has been fundamentally captured, but there have been different movements that are happening across Africa. I know some South African universities have pledged to divest. For example, at PowerShift Africa, we working with the Independent Africa Experts Group, right? And in those experts group, we've got individuals like Prof. Jacob Mulugeta, and we've already Prof. Fadel Kabub as well, and all these are Africans, and they have strong global academics, and we've already started producing materials, much like the Just Transition report for Africa. If you want to see it, just type justtransitionafrica.org, and that report is going to pop up. It's one of the most amazing reports you'd ever read about what it looks like for Africa, and it's a holistic version. Labor movements, the economic justice aspect, the debt aspect, the renewable energy aspect, and the global financial architecture aspect, and so much more. So there's been a big push around that, and that's what we're currently doing. In Kenya, the University of Nairobi, even though they've got a problematic chancellor, the University of Nairobi has got a department that trains judges on how to try environmental cases as well. So we cannot get it right overnight, but there's been a big push step by step to try and also help academic institutions. It's also a question around funders, right? You know, and philanthropists. They need to start putting in more for people to start producing more research on just transition issues, on climate justice issues. So that's also another conversation that we need to start having beyond the work that we are individually doing.
Mm-hmm. Now or never, the very last one.
Yes, you taking me by surprise, because I think forgot my question. I'm Alex, I'm from the Fossil Fuel Treaty Initiative, so we collaborated together. I have a question about the future beyond ECOP and the other ones. Do you have in mind some key fossil fuel projects, especially on gas, on the African continent that we need to fight against and where we need to create some collaborations? And yes, and probably we'll have a chat after the session to dive into that a bit more.
Thank you for this question touching future perspectives. Do you have some reaction on that?
I think, so for us what's important is, and I think also answers where do we move on from here, is that there are many gas fights in Africa. The first one is the ECOP one, right? And we really need to start connecting more with French activists, and already that's been happening, right? But there's more that can be definitely done around that. So there's the battle between Uganda and France, and we have to create an alliance between Ugandan activists and French activists. When Germany could not invest gas into Senegal, they announced new gas investments into Nigeria. So there's a new bundle of work this year that needs to work between Germany activists and Nigerian activists around that pipeline. Then there is Eni. Is it called Eni? I always forget the name of these fossil fuel companies. Italian activists need to link up with Mozambican activists, because then there's that paradox between what Eni is currently doing in Mozambique and also, I mean, the rubbish Italy-Africa summit that just happened right now in January, right? And there was big collaboration from African activists and Italian think tanks as well to send out a letter, and that was absolutely fantastic. But that's also another battle that needs to be fought. I'm still trying to figure out who is the owner of the pipeline that is going through from Chad to Equatorial Guinea, into Cameroon, and into Mauritania. That is not really, I'm not yet sure who that one is as well, but that's also another particular fight. But another fight that we need to start doing here is, there's the Namibian fight as well, and that's Canada with Recon as well, so Canadian activists and African activists have to link there. But another thing that we need to do here is to change the EU taxonomy. Honestly, I mean, that is what we can work on together as well, because it's the change in EU taxonomy that happened that created the right environment for African governments to receive gas investments. And that's the current world that we are currently functioning under, and we need to change that, and we need to work towards that. I understand that there's the EU elections coming up this year, so there has to be a big push around the change in EU taxonomy in order for it to be abolished, or a moratorium call on gas, so that we do not create and we delay, at least for now, so that we can eventually metamorphosize that delay into stopping gas projects. So there's an amount of work that we could ideally do given our different regions. But if I could pick one, I would start with ECOP. You know, I would start with France. For me, they are the current biggest hypocrites that currently exist, particularly with Total. Thank you.
Okay, so to sum up on the question, what we expect from our activists from Europe, we hear that solidarity and the transfer of technology, those are the two main points I heard. And now, what can you promise to our activists here? That would be our last round. What could they expect from your work, or from you, to support the action here in Europe and Austria?
Yeah, from me, from Don't Gas Africa, you can always expect us to be here to support you guys in any way. Particularly today, I'm here to beat the far-right movement. They must fall, you know. But essentially, we're here to also, I know that there are new gas plants that have been popped up in Austria. Austria is still a big business partner for Russian gas as well. And we're here to also stand in solidarity with you, because obviously we all live in a global village. It's unfortunate that, you know, rich white men have divided us, but we all live in this one global village, and we face the climate emergency together. So we're here to stand in solidarity. We're here to push back we're also here to stand with you against the housing crisis in Austria. We're here to stand against racism. We're here to stand and push back on the far right because they're douchebags. And we're here to end the genocide in Palestine. So we're here and we're standing with you all, and we want to extend that and welcome that solidarity from our end.
I think for me, everything Dean said, but as of today, we go to stand against the far right in the strike at 2, right? And yes, I have initially been in collaboration with activists from Austria, and I pledge to continue that, and I pledge to go protect my community, and I pledge not to work for a fossil fuel company ever.
So God helps you.
So help me God.
For us, in Connected Advocacy, I think we are open to African-Europe climate crisis impact learning. We can always share our learning. We also understand yours, and let's see how ways we can bridge that gap for collective action. So we also could also do things around the African-Europe forums, holding democracy and human rights to promote climate actions. And I understand here the commons, the conservatives are almost losing Austria currently due to those big guys right now. So we can see how best we improved a cross-cultural community organizing that will bring human rights, democracy, and climate action. So we have local knowledge to provide, so you have technology to also provide. So let's see how best we work on a joint campaign, improve our advocacy skills, and also more collaborations. I think together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Hamira. Thank you, Prince, for being here. For me, it's as a person, it's really always a great inspiration when I see you at work and also hear about what you're doing in our African countries. I personally thank you very much. And to you, big thanks for everything and for the last one we do now. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you. We will continue right now in small talks and networking, and all the promise, you keep your promises, huh?
Thank you.
Ciao.